Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, a rather croaky Toby today, battling man flu, but very excited to be here today and introducing you all to Jim Sadler from AutoRek. Jim, it is lovely to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony, and I'm sorry to hear about your voice. I'll try and fill in what I can.
I will survive. I will survive. Listen, it's and I'll survive particularly because I think what we're talking about today is absolutely fascinating. As I said to you before we came on air, I've been talking to a number of different people this year about the whole concept of agent to agent work. Someone at the very start of the year told me that 2025 is the year of the agent. It seems to be playing out that way. Some fascinating conversations, some fascinating work. It's accelerating every single year, but it seems to be moving at pace even more so at the moment. The way that the areas we're going to be talking into, I think are really interesting. Doing it something slightly different, taking it from a different angle. I know AutoRek have been very heavily at the core of all this. So we've got lots to tuck into today, and it's going to be an exciting episode to film. So before we do that, Jim, just give us a little bit of a background about Jim Sadler and AutoRek.
Sure. Well, I'm Jim Sadler, as you said. I'm the CTO and CPO of AutoRek, so responsible for all of our product and technology operations in the business. So that's everything from devising where we take the products all the way through to realizing that in the real world with customers. And in terms of AutoRek, we are a UK-based fintech. We specialize in financial operations and financial reconciliations technology. We work with some of the biggest banks and insurance companies and asset managers and payments firms in the world, taking what is often very, very volatile, complex, high volume data and enabling them to match and reconcile that in real time, often because they've got either very, very large operations or more often they've got some quite stringent compliance requirements that they must fulfill, often every day. And so our software sits at the absolute heart of their financial operations and financial controls.
And I imagine a lot of what you've been talking about there has benefited tremendously by the advances in technology over the last couple of years in particular.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, software is replacing manual process or has been replacing manual process in this area for many years and still continues to do so. I mean, we recently issued a report on the payments industry, which showed that even now, many large firms are still reliant upon spreadsheets and manual processes to address some of these problems. And so actually, we think that this particular market space, which is becoming more regulatory driven, is just going to continue with its replacement of either legacy technology or some of the traditional office tools, or maybe even manual processes for some years to come.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're scratching the surface of it, and that to me is very exciting about what it can do, and in the constant press for productivity increases and efficiency gains, it absolutely leans into everything we're talking about today. So let's have a look at that. I mentioned it at the top of the show. A lot of talk at the moment about agents and AI and everything. It's there's no surprise around that for obvious reasons. But tell me first and foremost some of the advantages of what we hope to achieve through and what can happen to the industry around this.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I mean, I'd probably start with what I hope we don't try and achieve. Because my perspective on this is that if our goal were to simply just replace human labor, I think that will be a spectacular failure. That can't be
Absolutely.
the goal. So, so therefore, what is the goal? Well, and in my view on this, it has to be we have to deploy agent-to-agent technology to genuinely improve customer value, in whatever form we imagine that to be. And we'll probably touch on this a bit later when we come to some of the other topics, Tony, I suspect. But so what does that really mean? Well, if software has fundamentally solved maybe kind of what I call the happy path transactions and processes, the things that work as they should, the things that you can write into rules and procedures, you can replace what used to be manual processes, and you can do that at scale and in real time, then for me, the opportunity for agent to agent collaboration has to be in the unhappy path. Because if the software's already taken
Yeah.
care of the happy path, and the humans are actually dealing predominantly with things that go off system or that don't quite work as they should or are exceptions, which actually is a big part of the financial operations space that we work in, then it would be, well, probably a waste of time if the agents just replace the software in some way. What we really want the agents to do is to take all of that annoying manual handoff, exception management, tedious work off of the humans, or at least to assist the human workers in doing that, so they can spend much more time actually adding value to the enterprise and adding value to customers. So
Augmentation over replacement.
yeah, so I mean, there is an angle to that, of course, which is that inevitably the agents, therefore, will be taking some of the workload off the humans. But as I say, if the goal was simply human replacement, it would be a
Yeah.
spectacular failure.
Yeah.
So, for me, the hope is much greater transparency in financial services, much better controls, and much more customer value, and particularly with human capital being spent on really developing those customer relationships and customer value.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm so pleased you said that. And I think, I've spoken to various different companies at the moment who are, you know, dramatically reducing headcount and dramatically increasing agents at the same sort of time, and saying that they're still a 60, 70 person headcount business, despite the fact they're 20, just 40 of them are agents. I worry a little bit about what that looks like, and whether it's the right sort of pathway to come into. So I'm in Camp Jim on that so far, and where we're talking. But it comes on to we obviously see those advantages about where it comes into it, and to me, absolutely, it's the augmentation and ease and process just to allow people to increase that productivity is the overwhelming piece that I get very excited about within that. But we also know that, as with any adoption of technology, and we've seen it with various cycles over the last couple of years. I'm thinking, the mass hype around blockchain over recent years, and where that came into it. With AI at the same sort of stage, whilst I absolutely don't believe that this AI hype is a new thing. um, that well, AI isn't a new thing, but the hype probably is at the moment. I do think that there remains some hurdles that come around with the adoption of that same sort of stuff. And I know you've got a lot of thought around this as well. So give us your views on what that looks like. We focused a lot on the competence models, it's such and so more, but I know you think it goes a bit further than this as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we often think about the hurdles from the perspective of things like, say, regulation or legacy systems or cultural resistance or security or kind of other factors that tend to be at the front of our minds when we're thinking about a human-dominated ecosystem. But actually, I think there are a smaller number of more fundamental hurdles, which, if we can solve those, means that some of the more front of mind macro level factors could fall away very quickly. So I actually think the challenge here is to focus on the fundamental building blocks that represent hurdles, rather than maybe some of the more apparent things that we typically focus on in, as I say, in a human dominated ecosystem. And I think those boil down to three factors. Number one, the competence of agents. How skilled is an agent in performing a task or a process? Number two, how reliable is that agent? Can we actually rely on it to do that routinely over a period of time as part of some kind of ecosystem? And then number three, how trustworthy is the agent? Is its intentions pure and wholesome? And that might seem like a strange list, but let's sort of break that down a bit, because I think at the moment many of the AI programs are focused on the first of those, competence, building competence. I mean, if we think about how many of us are using AI in our everyday lives, either personally at work or maybe in our private lives, we're kind of focused on generating competence from those agents. Can it do that task for me? Can I get it to help me with writing that paper? So we're kind of interested in the competence angle, which is fine when your engagement with AI is on a one-to-one basis. Because, if I'm satisfied the agent I'm working with is competent, then kind of I'm satisfied. I don't need anyone else to be satisfied. Um, but the problem starts to sort of manifest in, particularly in regulated industry, but in any kind of ecosystem, when we start needing to get agent-to-agent collaboration. So let's take my individual agent example. Let's suppose that I was satisfied that an agent I've developed was fully competent in a task. And now I want to introduce that agent into an ecosystem. And there are other agents. Maybe Tony has developed an agent as well. And so Jim and Tony's agent now need to collaborate. If I simply say to you, yeah, my agent's fine, Tony, is yours fine? And you say yes. Well, is that enough for those? I mean, we're going to let them loose on the world's financial ecosystem. So it's fine to think about competence as sort of the first step. I mean, the first step in any AI program has to be satisfied that an agent can actually carry out a task, but it's only the first step. Competence then has to be aggregated. We have to think about how an ecosystem of agents can be competent together and how they can be satisfied that they are
Yeah.
competent together. But then they have to be proven over time. We have to show that that competence can endure and they're actually reliable. And what level of kind of guardrail and checking do we need to have in place? And then the final one is really trust. You know, and this might be something we want to sort of pick at a little bit. I mean, because we often think about whether humans will trust agents, which you know, I'm certain that there will come a time when each of us forms our own level of trust, and it's, you know, at least as much as we trust another human, let's say, because
Yeah.
you know there's a level of distrust in our human interactions. But that's not the problem for an agent ecosystem. The problem for an agent ecosystem is to what extent agents can trust one another and how they will trust one another. And we actually lack any of the protocols and frameworks for this. So, you know, if I've got over the hurdle of an individual agent competence, and I've already got over the hurdle of other agents being satisfied with my agent's competence, and if we've proven that over time and it's proven to be reliable, we still need to know that the intentions of all the agents in that ecosystem have our best intentions at heart. Because, I mean, if you think about what would be the most obvious attack vector for a hacker in an
Yeah.
ecosystem, well, it would just simply be to introduce a highly competent agent, but nevertheless a rogue agent
Yeah.
into that
Yeah.
ecosystem to carry out its behest alongside all of the other agents,
Yeah.
um, you know, quietly and covertly without any checking. I mean, that would be an amazing opportunity for a hacker.
I mean,
So,
isn't it? And you don't even think about it like that as on it, and you know, you bring that up. Just it's immediately a massive issue, isn't it? And when you talk about it, particularly in front office, you know, technology. You mentioned their rogue agents. We've had rogue, you know, the rogue trader piece, which has been a human issue for many years. This is a fundamentally massive opportunity for, you know, for fin crime, which has been growing at pace anyway across industry, and
yeah,
definitely something there which you know, I've heard people sort of have reticence in the financial markets about AI, and the predominant thing has been about it being approximately right rather than exactly right within this sort of space. When you start to put rogue agents and agent to agent work into it, that suddenly decelerates the whole adoption in you know, in the sector significantly, doesn't it? Or can do.
well, if it could do. I mean, if we got to the point of having been completely satisfied on competence, reliability, and having done nothing on trust,
You got the
the
next
whole
frontier.
program would grind to a halt. And so actually
Yeah,
we
yeah,
need to be thinking about trust protocols now. I mean, my analogy here would probably be, you know, if you think about the birth of the internet, the absolute birth of the internet, even before this was used as you know, a marketing channel. Just imagine at the birth of the internet, we immediately try and turn it into a digital marketplace with revenue
yeah,
value chains, but we haven't got HTTP or TCP/IP protocols defined. It's literally nothing. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it'd be impossible to
yeah,
develop a digital marketplace. So why has the internet become so prevalent in terms of value creation and value chains? Well, it's because the protocols are there to enable trust and transparency and auditability between systems. For me, it's no different in the agent space. There are frameworks to develop. trust protocols to develop, competency protocols to develop. And when we have, if we develop those at the same time as focusing on competence, then there will be a very short window between competence and deployment. At the
Yeah.
moment, I think that there's an elongated time frame because competence will be reached before trust is established. And
Yeah.
so actually, as I say, we could, back to my sort of starting point, we often think about the hurdles being ones of security and compliance. But if you think about it, if we solve confidence, if we solve competence, reliability, and trust, then aspects like security and compliance will naturally just fall into place because they are built on the foundations of competence, reliability, and trust. So yeah, inevitably you have to start with competence, but it is only the start.
Yeah, exactly. I love that line of yeah, once yeah, confidence will be reached before trust is established. I just jotted that down because I think it's such a great catch-all line, isn't it, for what we're talking about here? And I think that sort of next phase is really important. And yeah, we've mentioned it, yeah, and touched on it there. Is all of this is forever dependent on the reaction and the appetite of the customer. You guys are very much at the forefront of this and seeing how customers are reacting. And we've had, we mentioned blockchain before. There's been other lessons that we've had over the adoption of technology through through the markets in years gone by. Tell us what it how you believe customers are going to react to all of this as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a very predictable way. I think the one
History's a great tutor.
the one great thing about humans is that we are mostly entirely predictable. I mean, some of us maybe are slightly unpredictable at times, but in aggregate, as a sort of a species, we are incredibly predictable. And so we can just look back at any other significant technological breakthrough and look at how customers have reacted. And I think when I look back at, as you say, blockchains or the dot-com boom, or even just
Yeah,
the turning of the internet from a marketing channel to a marketplace, customers have reacted in generally with it through three lenses. So curiosity, concern, and convenience. So I think they kind of happen in that order. So the first is curiosity. Like we are desperately curious creatures. Yeah, we give it. Many of us we like a new toy, we like a new thing, and we
shiny.
immediately become, some of us more than others, distracted and quite curious about what this thing is, and we start experimenting, we start playing with it. Yeah, and so we are certainly, if well into, if not well through the curiosity phase of AI. People are kind of, I think that Chat GPT was a groundbreaking moment when all of us either quite quickly or maybe over a period of time realized just how much help it could provide on some really,
Yeah,
really important and even basic things. So we're certainly in the curiosity phase. But then once curiosity has kind of been fulfilled, and once we've all had our appetite sort of quelled a bit, the next reaction is concern. We start to worry. We start to think about the bad things that could happen. We start to raise concerns about what it all means. We start to raise concerns about the ethics of it. And you can see this happening now. So if we're somewhat through the curiosity phase, you can see in the narrative that we're definitely starting the concern phase now, because people are talking about human labor replacement and what it means for wealth, and what it means for the
absolutely.
human purpose. I mean, so there's some really quite fundamental questions being asked about what it means to be a human and
We
without
suddenly got very
purpose.
philosophical, haven't we, about this whole
Um,
process?
so we are absolutely in the concern phase. But ultimately, I think we are creatures of convenience,
Yeah,
which is why I finish with the convenience point. And if you look at any mass technology adoption, in my view, the ones that have generated high levels of convenience have ultimately been successful.
yeah,
I mean, I think convenience trumps curiosity and concern is basically what
yeah,
I'm saying. and that if something doesn't have enough convenience attached to it, then the concerns will smother the adoption. And this is quite an important point because I think convenience is quite closely linked to strategy. So let me explain. If I'm in a firm in financial services and my AI program is entirely focused on cost reduction, then that's not going to make it any more convenient for my consumers. And so consumers may feel that it's quite skeptical, raise concerns about what's being done, and ultimately it may be a program that fails. But if my AI program was focused on real value creation for my consumers and their
Yeah,
lives became much, much more convenient, and I'm thinking banking apps here and online banking. I mean,
yeah,
everyone, we all talked about the loss of the high street, and it was real, and there are
yeah,
buildings that are now empty. But that didn't stop us using the convenience of mobile banking and banking apps. Why?
yeah,
Because it was just too easy.
yeah.
Because the focus was on value creation. So I think, as I say, we are desperately predictable creatures, and convenience will win, and convenience will trump regulation. Regulation will have to fall in line with what customer and consumer reaction is. So, as I say, we will be naturally curious. We will raise concerns, and ultimately, I think convenience will win. I
What a
mean,
wonderful way of putting it. I totally agree with you. I think it's one of those things where you just look at everything. That I often speak about the adoption of various ideas and businesses and technology startups. I'm always interested in what separates those that really succeed against those that don't. And just as I was playing it, as you were talking, I was playing in my head about those businesses that come through and really succeed. And convenience is at the heart of it. We're so used to everything being as easy as possible based off our phones and what we're doing on that on a day-to-day basis. Our personal lives are all about how can we make it as easy as possible to interact. And I think when you look at this industry, there are so many different areas there which can become a lot more easy for people to be able to use it. And our demands are, going back to the days of huge enterprise legacy tech and saying this, like it or lump it, this is what you've got. Now this patchwork of individual bespoke technology that allows you to play at your absolute best, having that convenience, people will work around the issues around trust and everything else around that. We're very good at finding the path of least resistance as humankind, aren't we? So I love the way it's that you put that together.
well, if anything, you could argue that we're too trusting if things are too convenient. I
Yeah,
mean,
very true, very true. The
yes,
yeah,
it's
that's
it,
the paradise of the fraudster, isn't it? That sort of
indeed, it
instance.
is. I mean, I don't think we actually fear I don't think humans fear intelligent agents as a concept.
Yeah,
I think we fear
yeah, yeah,
invisible agents. The ones that
yeah,
we can't see, that we don't know what they're doing, we don't know why it matters, we don't know how it's good for us. It's the invisible agents that we will fear. The ones that we can see
yeah.
help us out, I think we'll just go with it, to be honest.
Hide in plain sight. So this becomes quite a futurist sort of conversation, and that there's a evolution. There's lots of people who've been predicting a lot of stuff over the last couple of years in technology, and are constantly surprised by the pace of change and things that come up to it. So I know this is a difficult question, but if you do look a little bit further ahead, and you are trying to look at the next sort of, even 1, 2, 3 years of what sort of happens in this space, where are you standing on it, Jim?
Well, the place I should stand is not to make any technology prediction, obviously, especially one that's going to endure on the internet.
Exactly, lasts forever.
But I mean, I think we can look at some of the patterns now and predict maybe the next possibly 3 years. Beyond that, I don't think it's possible to generate any reliable prediction. I mean, we can certainly say that we will be moving from AI automation through to autonomy, I think.
Yeah,
So, and in fact, AI automation has been around in one form or another for quite a few years. RPA is a form of AI. It's just rules driven. It's just a different form. We often think AI is a new thing, but it's not really. I mean, language models are a new thing. So but I think the latest breakthroughs in AI give us the possibility for the first time to generate truly autonomous learning intelligent systems that can handle sort of a volatile, unpredictable world, as opposed
Yeah,
to automated systems, as I say, that kind of focus on software deployment and the happy path, the things that happen as they should. So I think we will move from kind of automated or AI powered workflows to ecosystems involving agents, where maybe in short value chains, agents for the first time will start to decide what to do and when and why. And I think the most obvious starting point for that will be within firms. So it will quite obviously be easier for any firm to trust its own agents ahead of anyone else's. So I
of
think we will
course.
see, deployment within firms, maybe within the back office, with some of the more difficult, tedious, exception management type procedures that don't follow a rules-driven pattern. And there'll be some value there. I think that we're already seeing agents helping through in terms of a customer engagement. We've been used to chatbots for a long time, but they're not that great, are they? I mean, a
Yeah,
genuinely intelligent help agent is a very useful thing, as opposed to one that's sort of pre-trained on some answers. Um, but then I think if I think about the edge of the time horizon that we're talking about here, which, as I say, is 2 to 3 years possibly, I think at the edge of that time horizon, we will start to see agents from different institutions starting to collaborate. I think we will have solved at least some of the trust protocols. And so we could see agents from different banks pre-clearing transactions, reconciling ledgers, maybe even mediating disputes in shared data environments. I mean, again, some of the more tedious stuff that is just difficult right now.
yeah,
Uh, but how fast we get there, I mean, I think probably on the back to our thoughts earlier, the competence is almost certainly there in many respects now. But we don't have we don't have the ecosystem and the protocols for them to collaborate. But I think that we will develop those. So it, it, we are on the edge of the next digitally remastering of financial services, in the same way that sort of the internet digitally remastered many industries. I think that this is the next big exponential change. I genuinely think this isn't one of the flash and bangs. I think we are
yeah,
on the
I
edge
agree.
of the next thing, but it won't happen gradually. I think that we will see a period of experimentation. Capability building will happen, confidence building happen, and protocols building will happen. We'll see that primarily focused in the back office, moving to the front office within a firm, and then the seismic shift, and this could be 2 to 3 years away, will be the mass proliferation of what I call agent diplomacy, agents from different institutions collaborating to achieve much larger value chains, for the benefit of customers. And I think when that happens, the digital remastering will happen very, very rapidly. I mean, really rapidly. I can see in entire industries being remastered overnight. I mean, the classic story of why Blockbuster couldn't survive in the video industry because of online streaming, we'll see something equivalent to that very, very rapid change happening, I think, in the sort of the 3 4 year time horizon, assuming that we can solve this problem of agent collaboration and trust. If we get there, then the world's our oyster. And I do think this is very much the next big industrial revolution.
We're just going to make sure we're not the Kodak, not the Blockbuster, when we're looking at adopting this. Which comes on to that whole point. Look, you're sat there at the very epicenter of all this. We've spoken about the excitement. I love that sort of whole concept there of it being this seminal moment and, over the next couple of years of what it can look like. So, if you're sat there and saying, firms are starting to think about this technology, think about adopting AI, yeah, as everyone should be, as everyone is, realistically. What are some of the practical steps that you'd add to that?
Yeah, well, it's a good question because where do you start? And I think there are some, again, we can look back a little bit and learn some lessons. So, I would say start small, but with something that has real stakes. You don't start with something small and trivial, because if you solve that problem, no one's interested. So start with a small problem, but make it meaningful. Pick some kind of high friction process, pick something that's self-contained and solve that problem first. That will give you important experience, but it will also build confidence and it will start to build trust.
Love
So
that.
that's number one. Start small, but make it meaningful. Probably rule two is design for the interoperability from day one. If agents are locked in from day one to isolated systems or rigid APIs, then they actually can't collaborate with one another. So we've got to think about designing now for a future ecosystem of agents, as opposed to designing now for individual agent co-workers sitting alongside individual humans. Yeah. I think to the point I made earlier around we don't distrust intelligent agents, we distrust invisible ones. Focus on explainability early. Log everything. Explain, let the agents explain how and why they're acting. Make sure the guardrails are in place. Put the boundaries in place. Put the fallback triggers are in place. Make sure escalation paths are there. And so, think about this from the perspective of where that ecosystem is going to end up, and the fact that sometime during that journey, trust has to be overcome. Don't make that the final barrier, is what I'm saying. Don't get into the point where competence is established, but trust is a long way away. And then I think, think I would say I often find it helpful to think about almost the metaphors or the examples. If what we're talking about here is a goal of autonomous agent ecosystems, then clearly we must also be talking about ecosystems that have guardrails and controls and the necessary safeguards. Well, I mean, to me, it's probably not too different from air traffic control. So, humans do not fly. Spoiler alert, humans don't fly every plane in the sky. I'm sorry if that's spoiled everyone's holiday plans. But we do not fly every plane all the time. But what we do have is an agreed, established global protocol where planes navigate and negotiate their airspace, and where we rehearse failure scenarios. We plan immediate intervention where required. We've got step-in rights. Humans can intervene within a few seconds of the prospect of a potential issue. And I think that's, think about an agent ecosystem, we should think about it in the same way. We want the agents to be able to do most of the work. We want the air traffic. We don't want the planes to fly. We want some of the planes to be able to fly themselves, but we also need the air traffic control. So whilst competence is being developed on some meaningful but maybe small cases, think about at the same time what the air traffic control environment will be, so that, in our case, we operate in highly regulated industry.
Yeah.
Think about the scenario where the regulator asks why a certain activity or decision was made and it was entirely agentic. And how are you going to answer that question? Well, you'll answer the question by saying, well, we established these rules and these frameworks. We had these interventions, we had these fallback scenarios, and these agents decided this in this way.
Yeah.
No different to humans. I think the
Yeah,
error,
exactly.
I think the error would be if we just imagine that our trust of agents, our need to find out and sort of log and audit what agents are doing is lower than humans. It's at least the same. I mean, it's probably more, I suspect, in the early days. So yeah, that would be my advice. Start small but meaningful. Design for interoperability from day one, and think about the air traffic control that will ultimately govern many agents working together.
Yeah, I love that air traffic control analogy. I think it sort of puts it really nicely together. So, Jim, look, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate all of the thought that's gone into this, and actually, it's just it's what I love about this subject is that my mind's being blown every conversation I have with it, and it sort of adds on to it with more and more elements and layers to think about. And I love speaking to bright people who are obviously, deep into this and thinking all the time about where it goes. And this is just a lovely way of and so many great like takeaways of that I've written down as we've been speaking as well. It's a catchphrase dream in terms of what we're looking at. So I've really enjoyed the conversation. Finish off, Jim, by telling me a little bit about where AutoRek fit into this and what you guys are doing in the space at the moment.
Yeah, okay, sure. Well, look, I mean, our products already have had a degree of machine intelligence built into them for quite a long time. We've
Yeah,
like many other firms, we've had we've had sort of rules-driven and machine learning-driven models active in our product. So actually today our product is AI enabled. It can ingest new data feeds and it can interpret data based on some training. It can suggest sort of manual matches to reconciliation problems that would require some human intervention, and it can take in machine learning models to auto-label data. So this is why I stress it's not a new thing. However, last November at our customer conference, we did demonstrate the possibilities of what an agent could do when trained on our product, and how it could operate that product through the product's API. And the results were quite stunning. I mean, I think it was sort of the room was silent, but for all the right reasons. But it was only experimental. So we found that an agent with sort of very little training, without really an understanding of AutoRek, the product, but having read 1,000 pages of product documentation, could actually carry out some quite complex tasks within our product that you would typically expect a human to do with almost sort of no help. And it was quite a groundbreaking moment. But as I say, it was experimental, and we used it to start the conversation with our customers about what would they want to see on this topic. Where is the real value? So if an agent conceivably could do all of this, well, what should we try and get it to do?
yeah, yeah.
Um, so that conversation,
And what a great thing as well. Sorry to interject, but what a great thing for in your position as a sort of CTO CPO hybrid to be having this sort of opportunity to be thinking about this sort of stuff right now as well.
oh, it's fantastic. It's probably the most exciting time of
Yeah,
my career, I think. And I was
yeah,
there,
yeah.
I've got a bit of grey hair. I was there at the start of the internet as well. So as I say, that was last November, and so we've been sort of working on our AI program in partnership with customer feedback since then, and we're now coming up to our next conference, November 2025. And just prior to that, probably from about mid-September on this topic, we've got some quite exciting news to share. But unfortunately, it's a teaser. I can't actually share details of that with you at the time.
Well, Jim, you're gonna have to come back on and do a special episode afterwards.
Maybe. But look, we are significantly advanced on the competence angle of agentic AI. We've been focusing on reliability. We've been focusing on the fact that our customers are operating in regulated industry, and our product's extensively used for regulated processes. Trust is a big part of our identity, because at the end of the day, trust in financial data is paramount. So we reached competence quite quickly. As I say, we've got some quite exciting news coming up in the next few weeks. But
Well, now, but I love a teaser. I love a teaser in these things, Jim.
it's not deliberate. You asked me the question. But,
Yeah.
uh, but I mean, we see agents as teammates, not tools. That's that. Our roadmap treats agents as co-workers that can take on any skilled persona in order to help with the job at hand. It's not just another piece of software, is what I'm saying. That's where we focus, because that's basically what customers told us they thought would generate most value for them.
Fantastic. Well, look, I love the fact you mentioned it there at the end that this is one of the most exciting times of your career. It comes out all the time. It's just I love watching the thought process and the thinking that's going into this at the moment and the excitement. When you're speaking to people who are deeply invested into this sort of area, just the the innovative thinking that it's allowed to create is something that I find really energizing to watch. And I've loved the episode. It's been brilliant having you on. And Jim, thank you very, very much for sharing the wisdom with us.
Well, thank you, Tony. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. And thank you all to watching. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. We will see you soon on the next episode of FinTech Focus TV, where hopefully the voice will have recovered and you won't have to deal with this croak all the way through. Absolute pleasure, Jim. Thank you very much. Goodbye to all.